Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the podcast where we're moving the conversation forward about the choices you make in your daily life. I'm your host, Monica Cox, and I'm here right alongside of you, learning, growing, observing, and trying to make better choices consciously and subconsciously. Together, we're going to become better versions of ourselves and have raw, honest, open conversations about the things that truly affect our lives. And maybe, just maybe, finally get to a place where everyone else's BS doesn't trigger us.
Right.
Like one can't put a sentence together and the other one is just like on cray cray town. Like, give me whatever Trump is smoking. Like, I want to go. Like, he's just
I mean, honestly, it's actually quite insane the level of I don't even know what the right word is. The uh, fairy dust that gets sprinkled over both of those men. I'm just very, very curious as to how they believe that anything that they say has anything to do with the country.
Yeah, I mean, I can only come back to me, and I remember sitting. So I only really got into politics because my husband was in the military in the UK, and it was very obvious that no matter whatever America did, the UK was going to do. So whatever
Mhm.
war America went, my husband was going to go there, right? So
Yes.
that's why I got involved, because it was the only place I could vote. Um, but I have to admit, I was very sucked into the bubble of like my belief system, what I wanted. Obviously, I feel Obama was, and I still like, I would totally have dinner with Obama. Like, sit down, like, like I'll chill with that guy
Yeah.
totally. Um, but so I think it's just until you wake up from this false reality that you're living in, because when we moved back to America, um and my head finally got above water after having two small boys, and I was listening to the news, like Rachel Maddow and all the people that I was sucked into, I was like, what the fuck? Like, you're just as bad as Fox News,
Oh my
just as
gosh, yeah.
bad as all that propaganda that you're telling me they're spreading. And I'll just say it was about COVID, and I had a very different view about COVID. And I was like, you guys are just as bad as the people screaming anti-vax. You're just as bad going vax, 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 you know?
Yes.
So I think it's that, and I only shifted because my life got so uncomfortable with my
Mm.
fertility journey that I had to shift. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people, I know multiple members of my family and friends that haven't shifted because their life hasn't gotten comfortable enough for them to go, okay,
Yes.
I need to wake up. And I think that just goes into this part of our life that is politics.
Yes. And that is, I wish I could remember the quote of like there are four reasons for why people change. And one of them is pain. It becomes painful, it becomes uncomfortable. And so it becomes too much so, and that's why people shift. And I wish that that wasn't the case. I wish that more people would go. I think another one of them was you become inspired enough, and the other one is you learn enough. And I wish that it was more along the lines of those two, that
Mm-hmm.
people would get inspired enough to change,
Yeah.
that they would learn enough to change and would want better. And I this is where I get confused because you hear boomers and Gen Xers talking about wanting change, and yet their actions show me they're not actually for change. As a
Mm-hmm.
millennial, I'm like, my life has been about change.
Yeah.
Everything I have been through since I was born has been about change.
Yeah.
The way that I went to school, the way I learned, the way that I go to work, the way that the decisions I had to make as far as did I go to college or not. Everything that was told right at the beginning, it shifted when I was a teenager. It shifted again now that I'm an adult. And in the last 5 years alone, so much has shifted.
Mhm.
I grew up in a time when science was respected. Things were changing and people were actively like, okay, what's going on here? Because when the year that I was born, so much changed health wise for people. And, through the 90s, it was 90s and 2000s, it was very polarized as far as health is concerned. So things were even actively shifting then. But to come into a time, to be alive in a time and fully consciously aware, I'm not a child now, right? So it's not like I'm just secondhand 5 years later hearing about what people were having done. No, I was living it.
Mhm.
To actually see science lose credibility because the scientific method was being like shot in the back, it's been one of the most like shocking, hurtful times, like for my own brain and my own heart, to like
Yeah.
be a scientist and to have that not mean anything is terrible. So
Do
it's all
you
about change.
Yeah. Do you think that's out of desperation to keep the control, though?
Yes, yes.
Like,
I
they
think
can't go with the true scientific method because it would expose how we got to where we are in the first place?
yes, yeah. Science has for the past, I would say, I mean, because things changed so much in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, that alone tells me that um me learning about science and what to do, that we were the last remnants.
Mhm.
I was learning it the last bit from when science was like truly being done in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Um and like the government was imposing their like crap onto different into different factions. And so like it hadn't fully transitioned. We have now transitioned. Now science is not about asking a question and trying to prove that question
Mhm.
wrong, trying to say, okay, this is what I think is going to happen, and then conducting an experiment to see if that's wrong. Now it's saying this is what I believe, and now it's about creating an experiment that's going to make that true,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
not how science is supposed to go.
Yeah.
And because that is the way that science is going, all of the research from the 80s on till now means jack shit. You can't read it and actually have it be meaningful, because it's all backed by like the Illuminati and the like,
Get
dark
that tin
beings,
hat.
like the government, and whoever, whatever dark entities like control that sort of thing. Whenever you see a scientific study that where their hypothesis is one thing and their discussion is like, and everything about this is like we made this assumption and it's all correct, you
Mhm.
have that is bullshit science.
It's so funny
Bullshit science.
because I mean, obviously, the science around fertility is just so shitty. And that's what I say. I was like, you're taking old 80s junkie science and making it a truth.
Yes.
That research back then, do I believe they did it as consciously as they possibly could? I'm just gonna say yes. Um, but like
Half
you
yes.
don't have to be a scientist to read it and go, that seems really biased.
Yeah.
Like, where did you get that from?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that's where like tapping back into the government and it being this puppet show, but how do we get our hope back? And like that's why I said like I had
Mm.
to just choose because I was really on the fence of like wanting to like talk about politics, right? I don't know shit. Do not like don't put me in a pub quiz about politics or whatever. But I also know that you can make an informed decision by listening to certain candidates and maybe the represent, like whatever, the people
Yeah.
who you choose. Like you don't need to know everything. You just have to be educated, use your discernment. Do I agree with everything Kennedy says? No. But like, are you ever going to get a person like that? You just have to go with who you think is best going to represent you. Um, but like, I mean, there's no normal like person listening to this podcast. Like, we all got tin hats. If you are here with us, like you are already
And we all look gorgeous.
right. But what about like talking about it? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're too scared because you don't want to piss your like auntie off, or like this might offend someone, like or they might think I'm crazy for supporting, even if it is Trump, Biden, or Kennedy, right? Why do you think
Yeah.
it's important for people to show up and have healthy dialogue? Because that's where we need to get back to. We need to be able to sit in circles and have a healthy conversation. I think you're just old enough to know what politics was like before Obama.
Yeah.
You didn't have fights like you have now, and I don't think
No.
Obama necessarily started that, but I don't know what the tipping point of people being so radical on
I think
politics.
I honestly think it was Trump, to be honest. I think Obama put a fire underneath a lot of people's asses because he was so different. Number one, he was the first Black president. He was the first Black man to stand up and say, I think I can be a good thing for this country and for the people. And I have my thoughts on, what's supposed to go on. And I think
Let me
he
like
got
put some like conspiracy there in there though. Do you not think that there was a white passing man who had black bloodline as president at some point in our history?
it's an interesting thought. I've never actually been asked that question. Um,
Because there's got to be like we're like those people back in the day did not have
I'm trying to think
contraception.
of like who it would be. My initial gut, it says no.
No,
That no,
no.
there wasn't a white passing. It would be a very interesting, it would be a very interesting thing. But I also have the opinion that if you are white passing and you don't stand up in your blackness or in your brownness or in your Asianness, and you embrace your quote like whiteness, then you're just as white as the next actual Caucasian person. I feel like there is a cultural like coloredness, and like um then there's like the um what's the word I'm looking for? There's a realness. That's the best word that I can use. So like somebody who is a quote unquote colored person, I'm going to use that term because I don't want to limit it to just Black people,
Yeah.
that can quote pass. Okay, so from anywhere else other than like the Caucasian race, right? Or that's not even there isn't a Caucasian race, the Caucasian color. Um, if you are like, well, I can pass for white, and you totally like negate the fact that you're not, but you just go with that, I think that you've now like quote unquote lost your Black card. Then go ahead and be white.
Yeah, but we're talking about
Like, you
people
know what I
like
mean?
back in the day where like that they I don't even know if they yeah, anyways, that's like
They
for
would have
another
gotten lynched if they had said that they were,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I think you've
So,
sold your soul. Like if there was a person that did that, I would say they're
but
no
could you
more
blame
colored
them?
to me.
But could you blame them
Yes.
for that time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and the reason why I say that is because I come from a long line of people, both from like the colored side of my line, right? My African American side, as well as the fact that I'm a woman and come from people who were strung up not because of their color, but because of their witchcraft
Yeah.
or their priesthood, right? That said, you know what? I'm not going to deny who I am.
Yeah.
Go ahead and kill me, but I'm not going to deny who I
Yeah.
am. And
Okay.
so,
Can you flip it on the other side though? Because Obama was biracial, and
yeah,
could you ever look at it as, well, he didn't he
he
I don't
didn't
know
play
how to,
white enough.
yeah, like not wide enough. And I don't mean like, to me it's all like it's all like heritage, right? Of like
Yeah.
um it's not really the color of your skin, it's like who you grew up with and all that, and like we define those things like that. But can you flip it like, oh, he used the black card too much, or denounce his white side too much? I'm just like, I'm playing devil's
Sure.
advocate here,
No, yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I
Like,
think it's great. Yeah, no, I truly believe that in um yes, to answer the short answer is yes. I think that you absolutely can like go and say, especially if you're a person who's biracial. It's one of the reasons why I'm strangely grateful that my last name is White. Um I, because as a person who's biracial, the question of how do you exist in, and this is a whole other topic of conversation, but very quickly of saying like, you know, yes, you know, I am a proud Black woman, but at the same time, I'm also a very proud white woman. I don't have to say that I'm a proud white woman because it's not something that is required of me in my society. People who know
yeah,
that I'm
okay,
white
yeah.
like go, "Oh, yay, you're white," right?
Which is still like just bizarre to me. Like, I know I have a very different view on race because I don't know, maybe just fucked up in the brain. I'm not sure, but like I I see your color of your
Mhm.
skin. I see the color of your eyes. I see the color of your sweater.
Mhm.
My first reaction is always judgment because that's how our brains are fucking wired,
Of
right?
course.
But my second reaction, it has nothing to do with that.
Right.
Right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't even look at that, and, like, I really truly put that bias aside and get to know you, and then I can say, like, "Oh, well, she's just a bitch." Like, it doesn't matter,
Right.
like, what color
Yes.
your skin is or, like, what your religion is, like, that's a big one, right?
Yes.
When you get into spirituality and, like, you're real, like, I was fucking super judgmental of people and their religion. Now I'm like, "Okay, that doesn't matter." Like, I'm not
Right.
gonna judge them because they choose to believe, just like I'm not gonna judge someone because of their skin color. Or I mean, people get to choose what they wear, so maybe like that's a
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think at the end of the day, like, you know, Obama kind of kicked off that whole idea of like change could come, but I think the polarization happened during Trump
yeah. Well, do you
because
see, I
no
kind of,
longer we didn't have a politician that was running. We had a celebrity who was running, and it's very different.
yeah. Um, like for me, what I felt about the whole situation is that there's always been this tenseness between races, right? And
Yeah.
obviously so much history, so much ancestral stuff, like probably
Yeah.
like information like we don't even know because we only know from what person
Yep.
who knew how to write a book could tell us,
Yep.
right?
The victors write the history books. So
So we
that's what
have
we know.
all this tension. And I felt like, and I didn't live in America during this time, so I don't really have like a good basis, but this is what my gut feeling is that it kind of got squashed. Like no one, like converse shit was still happening. But everyone's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
well, there's a black man." No one ever said there's a biracial man in the
No.
office, right?
Yeah.
Which I feel is a more accurate statement if you want to make a statement about his skin color and stuff. But
Yeah.
I felt like it got squashed and everything was just like
Yes.
squash, squash, squash. And then you get fucking Trump, like the fire. He was just like I
Gonna drain the swamp.
well, like, it's like
Yeah.
nothing got cleaned up. You know, you think of a wildfire, like Southern California, everyone has to clean their shit up, right? In
Yes.
preparation for possible wildfire. So you clean that up where I felt like nothing got cleaned up. Everything's fine. Squash it under, squash it under, squash it under. But you still had like shit shows everywhere. And then like Trump came in, gasoline, boosh.
Yes.
Where all
Yes.
those problems were already there
Yes.
for like centuries,
Yes.
like, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and so and then I just think you get someone like Biden who comes in and, makes that statement like, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. And you're just sitting there going like, why are we even putting skin color into how we feel about policies
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
laws and all that? And I mean,
Yeah. I
I
mean
know.
the simple of it is no white person is going to understand what it is to be a black person in our society today. However, that does not mean that a white person's thought process on what could be good for the country couldn't be beneficial to them. Like we have this whole thing in minority culture where we're like, well, they don't understand me, they could never live my life, and therefore they can't possibly know what's good for me. You are looking at it very, very wrong. Very wrong. Just because somebody doesn't live my life and doesn't get, questioned the same in a grocery store as I do, or a shopping mall or whatever, doesn't mean that their thoughts on family doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
That their thoughts on, healthcare doesn't resonate with me. So I don't understand why we have to make that sort of like leap of like, oh, well, if you're black, then you should vote liberal. And I know more black people who vote conservative simply because they like the idea of money.
Right.
And liberals tend to be so freaking poor.
Well, oh God, we can just like go on and on and on. But my husband said the other day he read an article that the Hispanic have always been, dominantly for the liberals. But this new, this kind of second generation or first generation Mexican American or Hispanic, whatever it is, they're kind of like, fuck that, like and it's really interesting to watch
And
the.
why? Because they really, really are very interested in having secure borders. You might think that all of the immigrants, right, are all about wanting to be on the liberal side because they think that they want these open borders. No, 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 no. No, if they're already here, you best believe they don't want their position to be compromised. So they are actually voting more conservative in their states as well as in national elections because they actually value closing down the borders so that not more of their, those people, because all of a sudden you come in here and you're a part of us, and those people, they can't come in. Doesn't matter
Mhm.
how they got here.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
some of those people are illegal, some of them are not. Some of them have family members who came over illegally, but they're here legally or whatever. It doesn't matter what their situation is.
Mhm.
All they know is that they want to protect their families.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is where I'm like, you can't like say, well, if you're one thing, then therefore you should be on one side. No, I can tell you so many different examples of just this stuff like that, where it's like, no, no, black people really enjoy money actually. And they tend to be more capitalistic than most white people I know. Why? Because black people are the ones that own basically the health and beauty industry. Do you know how much money my hair can cost me? You know what I mean? Like shoes are like one of like have been like blown up by either people who are in sports who are black and who are kind of leading the charge within like health leisure, or in like high fashion.
Do you
Like,
think too that people are waking up to the realization that what you are being told creates your reality? So like the whole like, oh, you're hard done by, like you need a helping hand, with affirmative action or whatever it is. You need our support. And do you think more people are waking up like, actually that's harming the thoughts of our younger children that they just by the default of their color, they are at a disadvantage? Do you think more people are waking up like we don't want to be spoken to like that?
I think people woke up to that a long time ago. I think that there's still this idea among many that the people who are the quote unquote minorities in this country have this idea that they are at the whim and at the mercy of their circumstance. When in reality, do you know who affirmative action actually helps more and has since its inception? Middle-aged white women get more on welfare programs than Black people ever have.
Mm.
Why? Because the country has always been on this idea that white people should be uplifted. So of course, white people would benefit more from things like welfare and food shelters. Do you understand that Black people and brown people and Asian people are prideful? We don't want a helping hand. Yes, definitely they will play the victim. Absolutely 100%. There is probably not a Black person on this planet, including myself, that has not at one point or other said, I just had a bout of the massa today. Like, absolutely. I'm not even going to pretend like we don't or can't play victim. We absolutely can. But you turn around and you want me be like, here, how about I give you this food or this money? I'm going to turn around and be like, you don't think that I can take care of myself? Like, you haven't been in a Black neighborhood.
Mm.
We take care of our own, we uplift our own, like, and we don't want handouts. We don't like that. And it takes a lot. And now you've got this like shift where more and more people are like, it's not you taking a handout. Use the things that the government provides, and all this other stuff. There's no shame in it. And I agree with all of that too. But like, I think people, especially minorities in this country, have woken up to that a lot. It doesn't mean that they're not exempt from playing the victim,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
And
we do still see.
everyone, right? Yeah. I don't think that's
Exactly.
I don't think that's like a race or a religion thing. That's just a human thing. Um, Next time we have you on, we're gonna talk about the Cat Williams interview because
Yay.
I know that a lot of that went around TikTok when he was on someone else's podcast, but you've just brought my attention that he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. So, and I never got into the other stuff because, like, we were having the conversation. I kind of don't care. Like, I listened to Kennedy
Yes.
because he's running for president, and even if he was just like running for Senate or like some kind of position to help this country with his views and like different ways of thinking. That's why I listened to it. I felt like the Cat Williams thing is like more on the like Hollywood and
Hmm.
music industry and all that kind of stuff, and I just have very little interest in that bullshit. But in reality, it's the same as politics. It's the
Hmm.
like I guess you can't really distinguish between that, but I guess you can vote with like I don't even watch movies anymore. Like I don't give them any of my money. Like I just don't. And like anyone who's like at the like VMAs or Oscars or CMT, all that shit. I don't even listen to their music anymore. I'm like, you
I
guys
I
are
don't I don't listen. I don't like watch things like the CMTs or like GMA or not GMA. Good Morning America. The Grammys. Um, but I watch film because I want to see like who's like trying to like give truth. So many things in movies, but I think
yeah.
people are gonna really love listening to the Cat Williams one because even though he's like a comedian, they talk about like comedy for all of like 3 seconds, and then it's all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's all this
Yeah.
other, like they don't even talk about what you would think that they would talk about, which I think
Yeah.
is really
Yeah,
fascinating.
and I would love to talk about it. Even like the Joe Rogan interviews, and he's understood the assignment,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yes.
Getting on podcasts. and showing himself speaking and using social media, being able to use clips of him is how he has a chance. And there was, I don't know if I shared it the other day, I think I did, about how he was on CNN. Someone gave him a spot on like a major news outlet, and they butchered his interview. They just took it, and then
Mm.
someone writes articles. JFK said this, and he's just sitting there going like, "I fucking didn't say that." Like, it's so
Right. I
crazy.
saw that. I did see that, and I was really, like, saddened to, like, see that, but also not surprised at
Yeah.
all that
No.
that's exactly what they did, and that's what they do because, number 1, it's about sound bites, it's about, what's clickable, it's that clickbait sort of
Mhm.
thing, but also, everybody has an agenda, and unfortunately, there's not enough people who have, like, our agenda, which is we wanna give you something to think about, we wanna give you somewhere to go, something else to kind of chew on. We're not trying to get you to believe any one thing. I don't care if people believe anything or everything that I said, as long as it gets you to think.
Yeah.
But there's other agendas that are like, we are trying to make you think one way. And it's really, really unfortunate that even in those, what we would call liberal or moderate spaces, their agendas are all about, bringing more people to their cause instead of making more people aware. And that is really sad
Yeah.
in our country.
Well, that's why you got to use your discernment, man. That's like your superpower. I feel like your discernment and your intuition, if you get clear with those two things, like you're going to survive the next like 40 years of life, because it's
Amen.
just going to get harder to know who's lying to you and who isn't.
Yeah, that
Even
term
with,
disinformation is like a hot button word, and it's coming. It's here.
yeah.
It's here.
Thank you once again, Abigail. Your links are down in the
Yeah.
show notes. Always, always a pleasure. Just talking shit, man. I love it. Have a great
Love being
day.
on this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for joining us here on Choices. You can go ahead and leave a 5-star review because we're all friends here. But if you really want to move the conversation forward, please connect with us on our social media accounts, which you can find the links below. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time here on Choices.